Hi out there, it's me, Eloise, and today's video is brought to you by the letter F for feedback.
And a teeny fly, apparently.
Now that I've reached a point in my writing where I'm ready to share it with you all, I realize that there's a couple of terms I'm throwing around that I don't want to assume that you're all familiar with. I'm not trying to come off as condescending, I just don't want to assume that you know what I'm talking about. I'd like to take a moment to explain so I know that we're all on the same page. Most writers start off on this journey just for the fun of it, but once you get to the point where you want to publish your work either traditionally or independently, then there's additional things that you want to consider. One of the critical steps in this process is incorporating the feedback of critique partners and beta readers. So what is a critique partner? Whether you plan on publishing independently or traditionally, a critique partner is an essential asset for your writing arsenal. Critique partners are also known as CPs, and they are fellow writers who provide feedback for your work from a craft perspective. Generally, it's someone you connect with and exchange either chapters or manuscript. In essence, it's a partnership, hence critique partner. Critique partners are ideally on the same level of writing skill as you, and they focus on ways that you can improve your craft from a technical perspective. Expect them to point out issues with tenses, point of view slips, echoes, weasel words, things like that. Some people are nervous to connect. These are the first people, other than your mom or your sister, that are going to lay eyes on your sweet, messy baby of a manuscript. Stick with me, and I'll cover the reasons why it's important to reach out for a critique partner, even if you're risking getting it picked apart. What's a beta reader? Beta readers are similar to critique partners in that they're going to read your manuscript and give them feedback prior to you publishing it. You give them one of your earlier drafts and they read it from a reader's perspective. These individuals are usually a writer's target consumer. Ideally, the draft has been reviewed by the author for glaring mistakes, plot holes, and any developmental changes that need to happen. The kind of feedback a writer should look for from a beta reader is from a consumer's perspective. Was there any point in the story that they were bored? Were there any points where they were confused? How soon were they invested in the story? Which characters were their favorites? Which characters could use a little work? Unlike technical feedback from critique partners based on relatively standardized craft rules, feedback from beta readers can be customized for the writer. If you got this far and you still don't understand why critique partners and beta readers are useful for writers, I'm not sure what to tell you. If an aspiring author dreams of having their work well received by anyone other than their friends or family, they need feedback. Nobody gets it right the first time. I mean nobody. Your favorite author has critique partners and beta readers. A New York Times bestseller? Yep, they do too. By incorporating both of these types of feedback, you're ensuring that your work is one step closer to the best it can be. Mind you, there's still steps after, such as hiring an editor, but that's a topic for another day. As promised, here are 7 important things to consider before finding critique partners or beta readers. Number 1, it's nothing personal. It's important not to take rejection personally. Being a CP or beta reader is a significant time commitment that isn't traditionally compensated. Remember, most people are busy with their own lives. Writers especially have a hard enough time making time for their own writing, let alone giving free feedback for others. Number 2, criticism helps you grow. It's hard to hear and might hurt a little bit. Any negative feedback should be taken from the position of openness and willingness to learn and improve. Most writers who volunteer to give feedback aren't doing it with the intention of just being mean. That being said, a good CP or beta reader should give thoughtful responses that lessen the sting of criticism. Number 3, don't send them in blind. Make sure you communicate with your potential CPs or beta readers what your age category is, your genre, a synopsis, and trigger warnings. Please, for the love of all that is good, do not skip that last part. Not only is it a waste of your time, it's completely unfair to collaborators and unprofessional of you to blindside them with something that may be triggering. Give them the opportunity to understand what they're agreeing to, and be kind if they decide to pass because of your genre or one of the topics that you cover in your manuscript. This is especially true for beta readers, as the whole point of their job is to be your target audience. Number 4, proactive communication is key. As with any relationship, it's important to establish expectations and boundaries. Be clear, kind, and specific with what kind of feedback you're looking for. Agree on an expected turnaround time, but remember to be gracious and understanding. As difficult as it can be to initiate contact, it can be just as difficult for people to decline to commitments. A lot of people have a hard time saying no. Word requests for collaboration with thoughtfulness and understanding. Number 5, and on the level of importance, I should have ranked this as number 1. Be wary of scams. Please. I don't know if it's just my career as an accountant that makes me more aware of scams going around. And I know scammers can be kind of lazy, but the amount of people that fall for scams is surprising. Please, whenever money gets involved, be smart. If someone approaches you for money in exchange for their services, especially if it's unsolicited, I would highly recommend not engaging with them. There are times you may want to compensate beta readers or another author for a critique, but this is often to either provide an incentive to meet a deadline or to make up for the fact that you aren't going to look at their manuscript in return. Any fee you should be initiating to them. If anybody ever asks you for money, run away, okay? Cool. If you say, hey, I want to give you $25 to beta read my book, fine. If they say, hey, I'll beta read your book for $25, no. See the difference? Please. There's a difference. Please don't get scammed.
Editing Eloise here. I just want to make sure you guys also know that there are scammers posing as authors on places like Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and things like that. It's very hard for the actual author to get these people blocked and reported. So if you get messaged out of the blue, if you get followed by somebody claiming to be an author out of the blue and they're trying to strike up this conversation with you, I would proceed with caution and be very skeptical. Do your due diligence, research this person. Yep, just a heads up for that one.
Number 6. Less can be more. An abundance of feedback may sound great, but there comes a time where there's too many cooks in the kitchen. Until you have to read through 10 pages of notes from 15 different people. In this situation, less is more. Find 1 or 2 trusted critique partners. Remember to keep in mind your own available time to read and provide thoughtful feedback for their manuscripts. While there is more value in having multiple beta readers, anything over 3 to 5 of them is a bit much. You're looking to find if there's a consensus among them. You'll have outliers in your beta readers where maybe one really hates it, but the other 5 like it. That's what you're looking for, is enough people to give you a consensus of the plot and how your book is, but not so many that you are drowning in feedback. And number 7, it's not so easy. Just because someone is willing to be your CP or beta reader doesn't mean that they should be. Plenty of well-intentioned family or friends might say, hey, I'll beta read your book. They tell you, I'd love to read it. While the eagerness is definitely something that would make an author feel good, many people don't have the experience in providing the type of feedback that is necessary to have those thoughts be valuable, and they'll need additional guidance. Remember my previous point for establishing expectations? That's where that comes into play. If grandma is going to beta read for you, make sure to be clear on what kind of feedback you're looking for. Provide specific questions of what you want her thoughts on. Otherwise, you're going to get generic comments such as, I really liked it, or, it wasn't for me. And none of those kinds of comments do you any favors. So if you're a writer who's watching this video and you've never heard of a critique partner before, you may be wondering where you find critique partners. If you're a fan of Facebook, that's a great place to start. Just do a quick search at the top for a writing group and you're good to go. On the niche subgroup of YouTube called AuthorTube, there's loads of users that offer communities of writer groups on Discord servers. For those of you unfamiliar, Discord is a social platform that's essentially a modern-day chat room. On Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, you can follow authors and try to slide into their DMs. I've met most of my author friends and CPs on Instagram.
Like I mentioned in my section about scammers, please be cautious of these people posing as authors. I don't want you to go through the effort to try and make friends with somebody who's only talking to you to try and get money out of you.
If you're not feeling suave enough to strike up a conversation out of the blue, you can either use hashtags to look up authors who are looking for CPs or advertise yourself that way. If you'd rather not touch social media with a 10-foot pole, never fear, there are a number of websites that you can use as resources as well, which I'll link down below. And if you hate the internet as a whole, well, thanks for braving it to watch this video. In that situation, I would recommend checking out your local community college's course book. See if there's any writing classes you can take or clubs that you can join. Well, what about beta readers? Where can I find those? Much like Critique Partners, you can find beta readers almost anywhere on social media. This comes with some of the risks that I mentioned earlier of having people who are not necessarily qualified to be beta readers. You may either get volunteers who don't provide quality feedback, or they ghost you, or you may run into the situation of getting oodles of volunteers but absolutely no feedback at all. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are eager to help but don't realize the amount of work that it requires until they're chapters into it. Many of the websites that I've listed down below also offer ways to connect to beta readers. Finally, you can be like me, skip the search, and go for a beta reading service. As a working mom and author, the last thing I wanted to do was peruse the internet for hours on end trying to find reliable beta readers. That's when I discovered that my editor had started a beta reading service. I pay a small fee up front, and I'm guaranteed at least 3 beta reader feedback who have been trained on how to be a beta reader and have a list of questions that they thoroughly address. If you're interested, I'll go into more detail about my beta reader experience, but I highly recommend it, and I'm going to link information about that below as well. For those of you who aren't writers and are watching this, maybe you're wondering, how do you become a beta reader? Maybe you think beta reading sounds fun, that you want to help other authors, but you're not sure where to start. Just as I mentioned a minute ago, I invested in Brittany with E&A Editing Service. Offers both a free beta reading starter guide and a paid course. You can find both of them down below. To sum up, Critique Partners provide the technical feedback from an author's perspective. Beta readers provide reading experience feedback from a reader's perspective. Both are essential in crafting a satisfying novel for your intended consumers. And both are essential steps in publishing, whether you're going indie or traditional. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. You're one of my favorite people. If you have any other questions about Critique Partners or beta readers, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. If you're interested in learning more about E&A Editing Services and their beta reading program, please subscribe to my newsletter. Once I get my manuscript back from Brittany, I'll be posting a video about my whole experience with her. So keep an eye out for that one. You're not gonna wanna miss it. It's all from me today. See you next time. Bye.
Do you like writing?
Yes, I like writing.
Do you like mythology?
Yes, I like mythology.
Do you like my videos?
Yes, I like your videos.
Then what are you waiting for? Subscribe.